Hi everybody, my name's Ian Parks and I'm with the Chilliwack Giants from the Valley Community Football League. And today we're going to cover off commissioners training, which is extremely vital in making sure that our games get kicked off, pun intended, with a lot of organization and making sure that everybody is on the same page. So I put together a short PowerPoint presentation and we'll quickly go through that to make sure that we can cover off exactly what's required of the regular season for our commissioners. So first, an overview. The role of the game commissioner, we're going to cover off that in a little bit of detail. Preparation, what's required before the game and sometimes just minutes before the game is extremely important. Duties and responsibilities of the commissioner, field setup pre-game, and of course during the game, what your role is. Game reports and scoring, another really extremely important part to make sure that our season gets communicated and properly make sure that we exactly know what to do throughout the whole season. And rule reminders. Don't worry, you're not expected to be a referee, but we are going to make sure that we have rules at our fingertips to make sure that we can help make the game run smoothly. And then we're going to cover off some common issues and then we'll be wrapping it up. So first, the role of the game commissioner. It's an extension of the league commissioner on the field. So we have in the Valley Community Football League, this year we have 5 different associations. As a Giants commissioner, you will be an extension of the commissioner from the league, and that's extremely important. Communicate and work with the game officials and teams. So that's part of that pre-game preparation, is making sure that you talk to both teams as far as their head coaches as well as the head official. And really important to be neutral and apply the rules fairly. You are essentially an official on the field. Preparation. Be familiar with the rules. Like I said, you don't have to have them memorized, but there is a VCFL handbook. The most up-to-date one will be in the kit for the commissioner, and the TF, excuse me, the Canadian Amateur Rule Book for tackle football. The most up-to-date version with any amendments will always be included as well. The conduct of the game is covered in each of those. Field setup and equipment is extremely important. So to make sure that between 9-man and 12-man, the cones are set up in the proper spots. The player participation rule, and that's the 10-play rule that we're going to cover off a little bit later. The duties of the game commissioner, we'll go over that in detail. Scoring, which is different for some of the different levels. Ejections, which happens very, very rarely, but in the event that one occurs, we need to be aware. The commissioner's kit that I've alluded to, number one, it's got the VCFL handbook and the Carb TF, excuse me. The game sheets, which are pre-designed sheets of fill in the blanks. So you'll be filling in the score by quarter, the head official, the head coaches, really easy to go through, and we can include a copy of that in this package here as well. 2 kicking tees, 2 platforms, and some cones, just so that you're well prepared. Table and chair for comfort, setting up at the 55-yard line, right in between the benches. Now let's cover off the VCFL handbook. That's where you're going to get a lot of what the duties are of the VCFL, the commissioner. And specifically, section 6.6, the game commissioner. The home team association provides the game commissioner at all home games. That's you. That's the volunteers like yourself that are able to make this thing run smoothly. No commissioner equals a forfeit by the home team. And it's both in the VCFL and the VMFL, which is one of our sister leagues. And that's extremely important to note. 1 game commissioner per game and must remain on the sideline for the entire game. The rationale there is the speed and flow and direction of the first half might impact what's happening in the second half. So if we are switching at halftime, then there's no feel of the pulse of what's happening. So it's extremely important that 1 commissioner do the whole event. Game day field setup. In Adam, So currently 9-man at Adam. The field is 50 yards wide, 15 yards narrower than regulation field. Otherwise, it's the same as for the 12-man in the carb TVF. So the carb TVF is 65 yards wide for 12-man and 50 yards wide for 9-man. We'll mark off the commissioner's box, and that's what the cones are for, to make sure that nobody else intrudes in that area. No fans, no head coaches. It's a completely neutral area. Usually between the 45-yard lines on the player side of the field, and that's considered a buffer zone. So game day, we're ready to play, and now we have to make sure that each teams are ready to play as well. And that means going up to each of the head coaches 30 minutes before, introducing yourself and asking if they've got, if they're going to have the team available, if they're going to have any questions at all. As the home liaison, essentially, if they have any questions about water or trainers or 911 rules, etc., you can help them answer some of those questions as well. The playing field needs to be ready to play a minimum of 15 minutes before each game, so that both of the teams know exactly what the setup's going to be like. And that's player benches, sideline yard markers, goalpost protections, yardsticks, down boxes, any announcing equipment, if any. We're lucky in Chilliwack to have the tower for some of our volunteers, but it's really important that all of that stuff is there at the time of the game. And ensure that the sideline officials are available for the start of the game as well. And in Chilliwack at Townsend Park, we will have our sideline officials in the team room, and sometimes they might need to be reminded to get started. They might have been given incorrect information about the start time, etc. So your role is to ensure that all happens. So covering off the ball, or the footballs, essentially, for multiple different levels. Also in the VCFL handbook is the different styles of balls, whether it be Wilson or Spalding, and this is always changing, but just be sure to refer to the VCFL handbook. And it's section 2.5. And again, if somebody has a question about what's allowed, we have to remember that the referees from the LMFRA, the Lower Mainland Football Referee Association, are reffing at multiple different levels, including junior and in different divisions, etc. So they may want to refer to that as well, and you'll have that handy in the event that one opposing team seems to think that the game ball is not of equal size or the proper size. Timing is also a little bit different for each of the divisions. We'll go over that real quick. We have to know the timing, but in Chilliwack, we're lucky enough again to have the tower where the timekeeper will be separate from the commissioner. But of course, the actual time is always kept by the referee on the field. But the VCFL handbook section 2.8 will cover off those times, because really as the commissioner, people are going to look to you to have some of the answers. And even though you don't have the answers at the tip of your tongue right away, you have the opportunity to find them in the VCFL handbook. Adam and Pee Wee are 10-minute quarters, obviously 4 quarters. All others are 12-minute quarters. So that includes junior bantam, bantam, and midget. Section 2.10, large point differentials, also called the mercy rule. 18 plus at one point, the kickoffs change, the mercy rules. Referees are really good at understanding and knowing that, so I'm not going to get into the minutiae of that, but understand that if the clock starts running and not stopping on incomplete passes or out of bounds, etc., that there's usually a reason why. Check with the head official as to the timing, because the mercy rule, like I said, is the running time. The head official with the LMFRA will be wearing the white ball cap, and the rest of them will be wearing the black ball cap, so it's easy to understand and know when the timing is supposed to happen. The player participation rule, or the 10-play rule, section 2.9, it's a 10-play count per player that'll be enforced in Adam, Pee Wee, and Junior Bantam during the regular season. So you'll have one volunteer from each of the opposing teams on their respective benches, and just to ensure that there's an even and fair distribution of plays, and we do that with a minimum of 10 for every player. Exceptions to the rule are generally an issue that can be a common issue at times. That includes injury or illness. So clearly if somebody sprained their ankle in the first quarter and has only got 3 or 4 plays, then an injury will be noted and the trainer will sign off on that. Ejections or disqualifications, same thing. Bantam PPR only applies in the playoffs. Again, these things are cyclical and they change, but just refer to the respective handbooks. Non-playing players must or may remain within the team except as required. So if somebody's not playing, they're more than welcome to be a water boy or water girl. But of course, if they are ejected, they do need to leave the bench area, and there's a common sense approach to that for sure. But the referees are usually having a large part in that. So the monitors, as I mentioned, the volunteers from each of the respective teams. Each team supplies 2 individuals. One monitors their own and the other monitors the opposing team record. And really important that these are neutral players, that they're not scouting, that they're not cheering, that they're not talking to the other players on the other team, that they've got a role to fulfill. And one of your jobs as commissioner is to make sure that they fulfill that role. And of course, if there's a discrepancy, they're filling out a form which needs to be signed by the head coach at the end, and the game commissioner will verify if there's any discrepancies. And each coach will sign. So talking with the officials and coaches basically makes things go smoothly. Establish a rapport, be positive, introduce yourself by first name, check with the head official on the following. The timing, just to confirm, because sometimes the officials might have come straight from a different tournament or different season game and might have it mixed up. The size of the game ball, like I mentioned earlier, and confirming the field setup, whether it's 9-man or 12-man. Sometimes the depth of the end zones changes, etc. That's extremely important. And also recording and confirming URs and OCs, so unnecessary roughnesses and objectionable conducts. So that's one of your bigger roles for sure. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. I'm just going to cover off game time. Receive the verified rosters from each team. So verified by the Valley Community Football League president or vice president, extremely important. And it's making sure that everybody's of the same age. So it's an administrative process that happens away from the field, but your job is to make sure that there is a verified roster from each of the teams, and you'll be holding those as at the end of the game to be handed in. Ensure only team officials and players are on the team benches, no fans allowed. So that just is a slippery slope if we start allowing fans. The fans are going to enjoy the game from the other side, and so that the coaches and the players can have the safety, essentially, of making sure that they have no distractions on their bench. And observe conduct of team officials and players on the team benches. If you hear profanity or inappropriate language, then you can record that as required, remembering, of course, that we're dealing with children at the end of the day. Scoring. Again, everything is back to the VCFL handbook, but part 5 in the game scoring, Adam, Pee Wee, and Junior Bantam converts are 2 points, and run or pass converts are only 1. So it's opposite of professional football, but it's an opportunity to develop kickers at a young age. Bantam and midget, also as the carb TVF, but a kicked convert is now worth 1 and runner pass is worth 2, just like professional football. Injuries, only trainers or designates are allowed on the field when an injury occurs. Sometimes you'll get a parent that wants to intervene. There's a common sense approach to that as well with serious injuries, but we don't need mom and dad coming over for every sprained ankle, essentially, slowing down the play of the game. So that's one of your roles, is to just make sure that you're controlling that field. If a doctor is summoned from the spectators by the game commissioner, that's you, Home Teams Association president, or any designate, you're the person that's from Chilliwack. You're going to know where Wolf Road is, where Prospera is. You're going to know whether or not it's appropriate to transport yourself to Chilliwack General Hospital because it's only a couple blocks away. So just know that people are going to look to you as the game commissioner as to whether or not that's required, and a trainer will usually tell you if it's required. So checking with the trainer whether or not an ambulance is required. Home Teams Association will make the call, and that could very well be you, like I said. So game ejections happens very, very infrequently, but the head official will inform you of the disqualification of the player, and that's where numbering is extremely important, the numbering of the verified rosters. The teams can change their numbers, but it needs to be changed prior to the beginning of the game so that you're aware, so that if number 25, for instance, was disqualified, that everybody knows who number 25 was at the end of that game. If it's a second or third disqualification, if other remedies need to be taken care of for that specific player. So the that approach towards that, whether or not that they're allowed to play the field, continue to be on the field, or whether they're responsive to the team official, etc., that will be again a common sense approach as to whether or not how often they get to leave the field. Before the player is escorted from the field, must remove their shoulder pads, game jersey, and helmets. The rationale is that they can become emotional at the time, so have them remove that and walk them off. The game will not resume until that player has been removed from the playing area, just to get away from any heightened emotion. Game reports. So game reports, for all of that stuff that we've talked about, being prepared and what your role is at the time of the game reports are really the most important, because whether or not the home team beat the visiting team or vice versa, you are the rubber that hits the road. You are the one that says this is the score, which will make a difference at the end of the season, which will make a difference for points for and points against. There's no, there's quite a process to be able to change that once it's been signed by everybody. But the game report is essentially the report that's really, really important. So game commissioner administers the game reports. That's us or you. You fill out the game details. And like I said, it's extremely easy. It's fill in the blank. There's a sample one in the commissioner's box as well that's been completed. It says sample on the top. Please do not remove that from the commissioner's kit. It's been completed and filled out with signatures in the proper area. And if you have any questions, you can refer to that as well. So we're going to record major fouls, which include objectionable conducts and unnecessary roughnesses, and the score. Coaches must sign them. So if a coach decides that they are not going to sign them, you can. It's important that you state why, or that he did not. But coaches must sign them, and all coaches understand that as well. That's part of their job. And if there's any issues or concern, check the box email to follow within 24 hours. We say 24 hours because often cooler heads will prevail, but just also understand that other people who weren't there might want to know or have some questions about why somebody might have gotten in an argument, etc. So the VCFL procedures and processes, we will be, you're going to keep the game reports and rosters, the verified rosters, and the player participation details, all in the commissioner's box, all paper clipped together. Super important. Then that must be submitted by the home field president by midnight of game day. And that'll happen via email, and that changes sometimes too as far as what email. Sometimes a photograph of those documents and a text is sufficient, but refer to the commissioner's box to make sure you know exactly what is required. Reports are reviewed and tracked by the league commissioners, and then ultimately a standings with points for, points against, and scores are kept with the All-Pro software within the VCFL, so that everybody in the VCFL, there's transparency as far as who's in first and who's in second, etc., so other teams can be able to assess for their season. Ejections may result in further discipline, so that's why that needs to be on there as well. Common issues, conduct. So really important, especially from 65 yards away, that if they say blue number 25, that you confirm, was it 25 or 35? Well, this is extremely important. So even if you have to walk onto the field just to confirm, that game's not going to continue until you confirm that you've got the proper number so that you can record that. The head coach is responsible for the team, the assistant coach. Any objectionable conducts can lead to head coach ejection and further discipline. So if the head coach essentially loses control of anybody on his coaching staff or with his players, ultimately the head coach is the pointy end of the stick. So that's extremely important to note. Working with the officials, communication is huge. Carry out player ejections carefully and be mindful that we're dealing with kids. An accumulation of 3 URs or 2 OCs and subsequent suspensions. So again, that's why it's important to note exactly what was on there, because accumulation of OCs and URs can be detrimental to a player's future for sure. And be accurate. So an ejection within the last 3 minutes of a game, automatic 1-game suspension. That's why it's important to note the time that occurred. Note on the game report the time in the game. And if unsure, because the clock is not always perfect, the actual game time is with the game official. So if it's anything underneath 5 minutes, I would check to confirm just to make sure that they have the exact time. So in conclusion, be prepared, know the rules. And some of that just includes watching this 20-minute clip of being confident enough to understand what your role is. Be fair and unbiased. And if you approach it completely understanding that you cannot pick sides in this instance, then your fairness, your objectivity, won't be called into question. Game reports, that's the biggest piece, just completed with all the information. If you have any questions, ask somebody who's been around for a while. All major fouls and score recorded correctly. There have been instances in the past where they weren't recorded correctly, and it was in fact recorded opposite, so it's quite a big deal to get that overturned. Both head coaches sign it. So now there's multiple people looking at it to make sure that there's no errors. And the completed forms to your club president or as directed, so they can be submitted to the VCFL. So that's it. That is commissioners in a nutshell. Please don't be overwhelmed with some of the rules or some of the things that we talked about today. It's one of the best jobs. It's the best seat in the house. You literally get sideline seats and only a couple of yards away from the sideline, hearing all the cool things you get to hear on the bench, being behind the scenes, essentially. It's like a backstage pass to a concert. You are there hearing the cracks of the shoulder pads, the exertion of the linemen in the trenches, and seeing within feet some of the coolest catches, sideline catches by some of the receivers, and you're right there. You're in the action. All you got to do is have some preparation, some level of preparation, and of course, make sure that you fill out some documents and be fair and unbiased. Thank you for listening. My name is Ian Parks again. I'm with the Chilliwack Giants, and please have fun out there.